Smiling Friends is perhaps the most fascinating Adult Swim series I have ever seen, and it's only after watching both seasons, the puppet recreations, Brazil episode, and what some might call an overindulgent number of video essays on the show, that I realized why we all love the show so goddamn much. Also, hey, I make other videos, they just tank in views, so if you want more of those, go show them some support. If not, that's fine. I love this show, its creators, and the creative work it gives various online artists, so I don't mind talking about it ad nauseum. I digress. I realize Smiling Friends is so special to many of us because it has to do with 4 specific elements that shouldn't work together, but through the magic of both Zach and Michael's brains, something truly special comes through. It really comes down to 4 core components: unashamed stupidity,
A stain of what?
My own doo-doo feces, okay?
absurdity, edginess, and I know you're all gonna hate this one, wholesomeness. Yep, I know that's a cardinal sin to call media wholesome these days, since Reddit has made the term incredibly insincere and cringe. However, that's the thing. Smiling Friends is actually surprisingly incredibly sincere. Think about it. When was the last time you watched an adult animated series that had characters who weren't constantly at each other's throats, acting as if they actually just hate each other? Okay, that's a bit of an oversimplification, but seriously, think of the number of shows that involve work-related settings where the coworkers and boss actually all like each other. There's a genuine sense of earnestness in the cast of Smiling Friends that just works. It's like slipping into a heated blanket in the middle of a cold autumn night, with shows like BoJack Horseman and Rick and Morty just before it being staples of elevated animated series with something to say, which really just meant looking at yourself in the reflection of your computer screen and thinking, Jesus Christ, am I this bad too? Is there really any surprise that a show about a colorful group of hapless goobers that resemble Muppets, written by a guy that most, until recently, thought likely looked like a Muppet himself, would explode in popularity? Also, holy shit, did I just find an excuse to talk about the Muppets mid-video essay? I guess I did. Quickly, remember to like and subscribe for more Adult Swim and Smiling Friends content like this. I have a Buy Me a Coffee page set up in my video description, but ultimately it's those likes and subs that make the real difference for my tiny channel. Plus, it's completely free and will put a smile on my dumb face. The Muppets was a little known thing when it made its debut in the mid-70s, when it first appeared on SNL as Sex and Violence, something you might not have known unless you're an avid Muppet enjoyer like myself, young Junko, my autistic friend from Wales, or someone who just watched the recent SNL biopic aptly titled Saturday Night. The reason for the title Sex and Violence being that, essentially,
it seems today that all you see is violence in movies and sex on TV.
But instead of being incredibly crass and genuinely most likely written by manatees at random, the Muppets title was a spoof on the type of content that was popular at the time, and to this day still probably is. Jim Henson had worked on various adult shows prior to this pilot for the Muppets, and wanted to show that Muppetry could be so much more than just something kids took in. It could be funny, entertaining for all audiences, but at the end of the day, still have a level of adult edginess.
Comedy. College kids and intellectual eggheads love the underlying symbolism of everything.
So why am I yapping about the Muppets in a video essay about why Smiling Friends makes us smile? Well, for one, there's a chance I might be on spectrum knowing my very specific interests. And 2, Smiling Friends almost feels like it shares similar DNA to the Muppets, knowing well the nature of most adult animated series, leading into outright edginess and gross characters. Smiling Friends in concept and namesake is essentially a spoof of this, just like Sex and Violence. It's a show that, while having enough edgy scenes when watched out of context, would likely make your parents cringe due to just how uncomfortable they may be, still dials it back and embraces the audience with moments of pure joy and happiness. Each episode, no matter how edgy it gets, often ends with a happy ending for the client or the Smiling Friends. Or, in the case of poor James, alone in his room cradling a photograph of Charlie as he drinks a beer and cries due to losing the one and only person who truly cared for him, even if this was fabricated, since it was just his job to do so. Somebody give James a hug, please. But what's funny about this is when I first watched watched this episode, I actually missed this moment, which honestly was a shame because I went many months feeling that although I thought it was possibly the strongest episode next to the original pilot, it still left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. Not because it was bad, but because despite the absurdity the episode embraces and has fun with when talking about the video game industry, we still had to witness our beloved yellow homunculus get abused by this roided up monster for a majority of the runtime.
Dude, I couldn't focus on what you were saying with that thing on your face. I was sick of staring at it.
And to top it off, what is it that makes him smile in the end? Murdering someone. Yeah. Mind you, this was kind of a happy accident as it ended up being the CEO blob that was giving Pim and Wimbley hell, so in the end, was it really all that bad that he died? Well, with that said, I went forever not knowing that the episode closes with him sad that he ruined things with Charlie.
You did it again, James. You pushed away the one guy who actually gave a damn about you.
James has an actual moment of regret, introspection, and accountability for his behaviors that drives people away that he loves. Rewatching this on my second watch-through recently was when the light went off in my head. Smiling Friends, for as openly stupid as it can be, absolutely absurd and at times grotesque, is a show that firmly places its foot in the door for full-out edginess for the sake of edginess. Something like a Family Guy, where there's only so many times you can see Peter abuse Meg before it actually just becomes kind of upsetting to watch. Smiling Friends doesn't patronize its viewers like they're a bunch of slack-jawed pigs sitting at the slop feeder waiting for more big-mouth tier comedy. The show doesn't hold its punches though, but like the Muppets, it plays with edginess but has a genuine sense of heart behind its writing. For every irredeemable character, there is often a counterbalance to them. For each moment Zach says some enlightened centrist shit like this,
I don't vote. Okay, I'll tell you why right now, Pim. Listen up very carefully. Little guys like you and me, we're called peons in this world, and we don't decide who the president is.
the election ends up being won by a single vote, and Charlie becomes more politically conscious. When you think of a character like James as just a one-dimensional character that gets away with all the pain and suffering he puts our favorite yellow maid through, Smiling Friends instead opts to end on just how much he himself is left to suffer alone due to his terrible life choices. Editing, Mr. Boone here, just no real good way to segue into this, but I'm super busy with work applications and interviews, so I just wanted to say, the thing I'm trying to say here is that Smiling Friends doesn't just leave things unresolved and miserable. It tries to end some of the loose ends, so the show doesn't just feel like a dread-filled nightmare and miserable thing to watch. And I guess this post-credit scene shouldn't come as a huge surprise, as Zach and Michael have since said in interviews, Smiling Friends is at its core a dumb show that's not supposed to evoke any deep thought in the viewer's head, like say a BoJack Horseman, where each season closes off with some level of grief, where BoJack's story ends with a sad feeling that those he loves, in spite of all he's done to improve, might not stay in his life. Smiling Friends simply wants to entertain its audience, and allow them to take a load off and have a good laugh, not to ruminate on sad or negative aspects of life. If James was written by somebody from the Family Guy team, they would have just left him completely to his own devices to continue the things he was doing, with little to no repercussion or sense of character growth. It's nothing super deep, but it's enough to actually give the show a little bit of sweetness within the fact that the episode was just Charlie getting abused for a majority of its runtime. And once again, I want to remind you that I'm not saying that BoJack Horseman or Rick and Morty are bad for having stories that lean harder into sad introspection. Far from it. More that when Smiling Friends first aired in 2020, during that hellscape of a time, we all since then, even to this day, needed something silly to make us smile again, like the Muppets show did in the turbulent 70s when the peace and love movement came to an unfortunate, violent end. For about 8 weeks, we tuned in to a colorful group of goobers just trying to make people smile at any cost. Perhaps not as wholesome as Joe Parra Talks With You, it still follows that criminally underrated show's lead in creating a series that instead of focusing on the negatives in life, optimistically looks forward to the little things in life that truly make us happy.
Yeah, what about that?
What? The ant?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cool.
And at the end of the day, with the November elections in America, the almost weekly announced wars and crimes, diseases, and the various very real emotional struggles we may ourselves already have to deal with on a daily basis, do we not deserve a little time for a dumb show like Smiling Friends to make us smile?